Here's a submission from djakette, and here's another submission from djakette. Let's do the same thing twice. Now, come on. Okay. When I asked if I had missed anybody, you said, oh, no, you missed number 1420. That's me. But I had 1427 on the list, and that's also you. So, you posted 2 times in the beta fight thread without help, and now you posted 2 times here. But I'm going to try to help you. So, we'll see if we can get this sorted out. I would like to start by doing some line of sight, or not line of sight, some just visual tuning here based on your video. And I've had some issues with my screen recording software not syncing the computer's audio correctly. So I hope it goes correctly this time because the audio is very important. Let's go ahead and play back, and I'll show you what I'm thinking. Now your copter seems very nervous. It's very on the edge of these little oscillations right there. And your flips and rolls are clean. That's good. But right there, you hear that little warble in the motors? There. Yeah. There it is again. There it is again. All of that feels to me like excess D-gain. Okay? That is noise coming from your gyros being translated into micro oscillations in the motors. I think we're going to look at your log and find that your D-gain is too high on at least one of your axes. Now you might think, whoa, what isn't it P-gain? And the thing is that I would expect to see P-term oscillations. They would have a different sound. I feel like they would have a different sound. And the way that these are occurring, it doesn't seem like they're happening at the times when P-term oscillations are most likely to happen. I'm not even sure I can describe it better than that. Like, if we had excess P-gain, why am I not seeing any bounce back or ringing at the end of your flips and rolls? But if you had a situation where you had maybe a little bit high P-term, or maybe pretty close to right, but your D-gain was really high, then during times when the gyro noise was relatively low, the copter would seem to fly well. And during times when the gyro noise was relatively high, those micro oscillations would come out. Okay? So that's why it feels to me like D-gain and not P-gain. Let's find out if I'm right. And we'll bring up the roll axis. And we will take a look. Let's just play this forward. Aha. Okay, so take a look at the D-term trace here. Notice that it has lots and lots of back and forth high frequency noise, and it is way greater in magnitude than the P-term trace. Okay? But then, during some times, it looks relatively clean and well behaved. And then, oh, there's a little oscillation there, and here it's coming out here. But now here, it's not too bad. Okay. Yeah, so that, oh, yeah, oh, bingo, right here. So yeah, I would reduce the D-gain on this copter significantly. Let's see if do we have anything to work with? Yeah, let's take a look at your dump. Thank you for providing your dump. So here's D of pitch of 22 and D of roll of 18, so I think that's the defaults. It looks like you've tuned, I can't remember the default. It looks like you're at the defaults. Are you? Yeah, you might be just at the defaults. Yeah, so your D is too high. You definitely need to reduce D. Yeah, so I look and I see that I think these are the default PIDs. So, pardon me if I've got that wrong, but definitely, this is a scenario where, again, go back to basics, go back to your basic tuning. Start tuning the P-gains with the D-gains low, and get the P-gains where they need to be, and then bring the D-gains up. The fact that the D-gains are at the defaults make me think that at the very least you haven't like tuned the D-gains at all. Maybe you tuned, I can't remember what the defaults are for pitch or for P, but maybe you tuned the P-gains a little bit, but you left the D-gains alone. But it's going to be very hard for you to tune the P-gains correctly when you don't know whether your D-gains are correct. So you need to drop the D-gains way down to like 3 or 4 or 5 maybe, somewhere in that range. Then check your P gains, look for oscillations in the P term, then slowly, like maybe two at a time, start raising the D gains and look for bad behavior. But this is just a clear example of excess D gain. The thing that I want everybody to take from this, the sort of interesting insight that we get here, is that the way the gyro noise works, let's look at just the gyro on its own axis. The way that gyro works is that there's times when the gyro is noisier and we get this crazy D-term oscillation. Look at your motors, by the way. Look how they're bouncing. Oof. Oof, that's those micro oscillations coming out. And then there's times when the gyro is quieter and the D-term settles down. And the times when that happens are going to be different than the times when the P-term oscillation occurs. P-term oscillation is pretty predictable when it's going to occur. If you pay attention to when an exercise you could do is you could intentionally, if you've got your P-term tuned perfectly, bump your P-term up by like 0.4. Not on LuxFloat. You guys using LuxFloat, that's way too much. But on like on Rewrite and MW 2.3, bump it up by like 0.4 or 0.5, maybe even a little more, to the point where you start bringing the oscillations out strongly and feel for the times when it happens. And you'll find that like there's consistent times when it happens. If you have the motors down at idle and you jam the throttle, you'll tend to get that oscillation. You know, in prop wash scenarios, you'll tend to get that oscillation. But if you're flying smooth in a straight line and you're not moving the sticks very much, you will not get oscillations, maybe unless the throttle goes really high. Whereas with D-term, with excess D gain, anytime there's vibration, you can get this sort of micro oscillation or this D-term effect. And so you could get it at a certain throttle position, right? You could get it at 1650 throttle almost regardless of what the copter's doing. That's because that's where the vibrations come out, and that's more of a D-term thing. Anyway, there you go. Yeah, take it back to basics. And, you know, in a scenario like this where it looks like your PIDs are basically at the defaults, I would say, you know, 101, lower the D gains, tune the P gains, work the D gains back up slowly. When they start looking like this, the D gains are too high. The thing is, folks, you don't need a lot of D-term. I don't think you need a lot of D-term with the Betaflight firmware and you know 8 kilohertz and all this stuff. You don't need a lot of D-term, in my opinion, to get a very good flight performance. Now, I know that Boris flies with D gains around 20 and 30, and I don't know what he's doing. I could not fly with mine that high and have anything like acceptable flight characteristics. But you know, way back in the day, Boris said, this was back when we were flying Clean Flight 1.9, and Boris said, hey, try turning your gyro LPF off. Yeah, my copter flies so much better that way. And I was flying gyro LPF equals 42, the default, and I tried turning it off, and my copter flew terrible. And I was like, what are you talking about, Boris? So this wouldn't be the first time that Boris was doing something completely different than what I could ever think of getting away with. And I just, you know, Boris is Boris. What can you do? Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Happy flying.